There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. I'm Shawn the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with a very short review. I'm hoping this is going to be my shortest review ever of a wonderful, very short novel from Norway, Aliss at the Fire by Jon Fosse, translated from the Norwegian by Damien Searles. I read it last week. It's 100 pages, and it is very experimental fiction, which is not usually my cup of tea. However, this one worked for me in a 5-star way. And why? Because the writing was so incredible and the story had packed such an emotional punch. Usually experimental fiction puts me to sleep. I don't really know what's going on, and I don't know what I should care about. I usually don't care about anything. This was a completely different reading experience. I was sucked in from the very first, and my confusion was like a throbbing of curiosity. I was never quite sure what perspective the story was being told from. It's almost a one-sentence story. There are a couple sentence breaks, I think. And there's an I in the first paragraph and an I in the last line, and I don't think there's any other I's, but then we are introduced in the first bit to Signy, who is an old lady in 2002, I think, and she is remembering. We see her, we inhabit her and see her. So again, the way that the narrator makes us watch her but also inhabit her was incredible. Remembering about 20 years ago that her husband, Assel, gotta pronounce that carefully, Assel, went out on his little boat on the fjord where he and his ancestors had lived, same house, same fjord, for generations and generations. And despite it being a storm, it seems like he went out on the water and drowned. His body was never found. So 20 or so years later, she is remembering it. We watch her remembering it. We experience her remembering him looking out the window for hours before he finally went out. And somehow Fosse puts us right into the man, Assel's mind, as he's watching out the window, and as he watches himself, and Signy watches him, and we watch her watch him as he possibly goes out and gets on the boat. So that's as much as I'm going to try to describe about the layeredness of this story, but it just worked in such a visceral way for me. Like I say, even when I was confused, I just loved it. I'm going to reread this book soon, because I think it would really repay a rereading. But the only other thing I'm going to say about the plot, it's not really a plot-driven novel as much as a series of scenes and images that are repeated and reimagined and re-envisioned and re-perspectivized. Is that a word? Over and over again, and the layers of meaning and emotional impact just accumulate with such power. So what gets conveyed to the reader is the generations of Assel's family, and many of them had the same name as him, and going back to his, I think, great-grandmother, Aliss, who is tending a bonfire with her 7-year-old son, who I think that was the first Assel, but I've forgotten. You will discover the genealogy as you read it, and I have already started to lose some of the family tree in my mind, but what I won't soon forget is the hypnotic effect of this poetic, meandering, shape-shifting prose. Jon Fosse is a writer's writer. He's so highly prized in Norway that the king, or is it a queen, I don't know, has given him a lifetime stipend and a house with which to live in the palace grounds or something for the rest of his life. He's the most produced playwright in Europe. supposed to be on everybody's short list for a Nobel, and after reading one short, incredibly compelling work of fiction, I can see what all the fuss is about, and I know that he's written a lot of other prose, so I will be reading it. But let me just give you a taste of the opening. Like I say, there's no periods, or the period of the first sentence would probably be 20 pages in, but so I'm going to read you a fragment that's about half a page's worth of page 1, just to give you a taste of the writing. And again, first word is I, and who is I? I see Signe lying there on the bench in the room, and she's looking at all the usual things, the old table, the stove, the wood box, the old paneling on the walls, the big window facing out onto the fjord. She looks at it all without seeing it, and everything is as it was before. Nothing has changed, but still, everything's different, she thinks, because since he disappeared and stayed gone, nothing is the same anymore. She is just there without being there. The days come, the days go, nights come, nights go, and she goes along with them, moving slowly, without letting anything leave much of a trace or make much of a difference. And does she know what day it is today, she thinks? Yes. Well, it must be Thursday, and it's March, and the year is 2002. Yes, she knows that much. But what the date is, and so on, no, she doesn't get that far. And anyway, why should she bother? What does it matter anyway, she thinks. No matter what, she can still be safe and solid in herself, the way she was before he disappeared. But then it comes back to her, how he disappeared, that Tuesday in late November in 1979, and all at once she is back in the emptiness, she thinks. And she looks at the hall door, and then it opens, and then she sees herself come in and shut the door behind her. And then she sees herself walk into the room, stop, and stand there and look at the window. And then she sees herself see him standing in front of the window. And she sees, standing there in the room, that he is standing and looking out into the darkness, with his long black hair and in his black sweater, the sweater she knit herself, and that he almost always wears when it's cold. He is standing there, she thinks, and he is almost at one with the darkness outside, she thinks. Yes. If that gets your attention, do check it out. It has converted me to Team Jon Fosse, for sure. Thanks for watching.